Wait, what? I can do that? This is Eric Bell with Wait, what? Financial matters that matter for business and the people that own them. Welcome to this episode of Wait, what? Financial matters that matter. This is Eric Bell. I'm fortunate today to have Thanh Pham with me, who is currently the Chief Credit and Chief Operating Officer of California International Bank. That is the only Vietnamese American bank in the country, I found out. He spent his entire 15-year career in banking. As a CCO and COO, he handles the entire loan portfolio and the day-to-day decisions of the bank. I met Thanh through the Small Business Development Corporation. He and I both sit on that board together. He's a graduate of Notre Dame. He holds a CPA license. He's also a chartered financial analyst, or a CFA. Besides being a finance geek, he just does whatever his wife tells him to do, or his life boss, and his two little daughters. Thanks for being here, Thanh.
Thank you for having me.
I didn't realize the strong concentration of Vietnamese here in Southern California, and you were telling me also in Northern California.
Yeah, so the Westminster, and more specifically the Little Saigon area, is the highest number of Vietnamese people, of heritage of Vietnamese people, outside of Vietnam itself. So it's about 190,000, and then trailing just shortly is San Jose with maybe 170. So they're catching up pretty quick, but I imagine for a while, Little Saigon's going to stay ahead as number one.
Now, I know you're the biggest or the only Vietnamese American bank in the country, but you have clients of all ethnicities and backgrounds and so forth, are people who bank with you.
Our client base is pretty wide, but the bank is headquartered in Little Saigon, and we have a focus in the Vietnamese community. We feel that there are just certain needs that aren't being met. An example I can give you is this year, my bank is a VITA site. So VITA is the volunteer income tax preparation program, and it provides tax returns for free for people making $60,000 and under. And we're the only bank in the program. We're the only site that's geared towards Vietnamese people. We have, on every Saturday, we have 8 or 9 Vietnamese-speaking individuals there to help out the communities.
Well, let me get this straight. People are voluntarily paying taxes?
They're volunteering to prepare income taxes for low-income people.
Wow.
And we're the only bank doing it. We're actually the only VITA site, period, that is geared towards Vietnamese people. Other sites have Vietnamese speakers, but we're the only one that is, we're out there on marketing towards Vietnamese people to help them save money.
As far as businesses are concerned, what should they look for in their bank? When a business is saying, I want to bank somewhere, what should they look for in terms of services and also personnel?
So the number one thing that a business should look for, and it sounds very cliche, but they want to find a bank that actually understands what they're doing and not just pushing a product. An example is you need a loan, and you go in and the bank, they can do line of credit, and they're just pushing a line of credit on you. But then they never find out that you export. So they give you a line of credit, but then they say all of your export receivables are not eligible. So that's just like, you might as well have not gotten a line from them.
Right.
So you need to go to a bank that understands what you do. And another example is a lot of banks say they do SBA lending. Then you go in and you fill out the paperwork, and eventually they do SBA lending, but they don't do the type of SBA lending that you want. It could be a hotel, a gas station, or car wash. Some banks don't want to do that.
So the bank should do a longer or better, a deeper dive on their discovery in terms of trying to figure out exactly what a client wants.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing.
Yes, as opposed to just trying to push a product on you.
Mm-hmm. And exporting, that's a big deal. I mean, there's export credits that are allowed to you from the federal government and all types of things.
Yeah.
So yes, I can see how that would be important. And you said not to push the product of the day. I know a lot of banks have quotas on loans and quotas on opening up checking accounts and quotas on different stuff. I'm taking it your bank does not do that.
So the bank definitely has targets. I do tell the team, don't just try to push a product, try to figure out what fits them. Take the time. Because ultimately, if you have a bad experience with the bank, you're going to go talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to avoid as much as possible.
Right. Capital is so important to companies as they grow, and in many cases just to survive. What does a bank need to do when they're getting ready to apply for a loan or apply for a line of credit? What do you suggest they do?
The number one thing that a customer should do when they're getting ready is have their financial statements in order. I know a lot of people think that, I only have to do it once a year when I'm talking to my CPA, get my taxes done, but a bank is not an accountant. They're not going to be able to look at your financial statements and just figure it out like your CPA would. You got to have it in order, or they may not be able to qualify you. Secondly, if you have anything that could be perceived as a wart in your background, be upfront, because the bank's going to find out. There's various public searches that they can do. They're definitely going to run your credit. So always have those warts right up in front. Like if you have a bankruptcy 6 years ago, make that one of the first things you tell the bank.
Now, what did you call that? Warts?
I just call it a wart. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I was going to say, is that an official banking term? I
didn't know. No, it's not.
All right. But if you have any derogatories in your background, you want to make sure you disclose those right up front instead of letting someone find out.
Yeah.
I agree. No surprises. You said financial statements. Point of clarity on that. What financial statements are you looking for?
So normally, for small businesses, right, the only financial statement that they consistently have to prepare is their tax return. So you want to have your tax returns ready to give to the bank. But also, if you're applying for a loan in August, let's say, it's been 8 months since you've updated your financial statement. So the bank isn't going to be able to make a decision without you having it's called interim financial statements in order for a bank to evaluate your current business operations.
Do audited profit and loss statements and balance sheets, does those come into play? Or
audited statements are going to be more required the more complex and bigger your transaction is. But generally, if you are below $5 million, below $3 million in a loan request, then you can get away with tax returns and the company prepared.
Okay. Are all banks the same in terms of what they will finance, or are they different? I heard you talk about SBA loans and the difference there. Can you kind of do a deeper dive on that in terms of what banks loan, how they loan, or specialize?
So generally, the way that banks compete is on three things: pricing, credit, and execution. And based on their credit appetite and whatnot, all that's going to be different. So pricing is very self-explanatory. The lowest rate out there with the lowest fees. And then credit, and that gets into more now with what different banks will approve. But credit, there's metrics like loan to value that they look at, how they calculate cash flow, different industry types, requirements for experience and location. Like a lot of people think that a bank, a 65% LTV out in the Inland Empire is the same as a 65% LTV in Newport Coast or Newport Beach, but that's not the case. So that's what I mean by location. For industry types, there are certain industries that are viewed as more stable. For example, the healthcare industry is going to be viewed as more favorable than a restaurant, just because a restaurant is more prone to consumer tastes and a recession. And then the execution, that's the toughest one to gauge because every bank is going to tell you they're going to do a good job. No bank is out there saying, I'm going to give you terrible customer service.
Right.
Yeah, right?
No.
So the only way to really gauge execution is by asking your referral sources how the bank will execute and how long they'll take. And who you're dealing with.
So normally people get referred into your bank. Is that how it works? And they can kind of give a testimonial or testify in terms of how good you guys are?
Well, yes, two things. They're either found by us or referrals, like you mentioned. When they're referred in, now we've developed enough of a track record where the referral source can say, I've done a deal with them, they can execute. But another thing is when they're found by us, they're immediately talking to me, and I'm a part of executive management. So if I'm giving you an answer, it's a decision maker giving you an answer. A lot of times at other banks, you'll be talking to a sales guy that wants to make you feel good, so you keep on strung along, and then at the end, he says, oh, it's somebody else that made the decision.
Portland.
Yeah.
Or someplace like that, or
yeah.
East Coast, yeah. Well, that's good. You're the decision maker. All the decisions are made there so they can happen quickly.
Yeah, happen quickly. That's the main thing. We may not be able to always execute for you, but if we can't, we'll tell you right away and just tell you why very succinctly.
Yeah, I'd rather get a quick no than a prolonged maybe.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong than a prolonged maybe. That's the worst thing you can get is a prolonged maybe.
A prolonged maybe is a waste of your time, and time is money.
Yeah. Now, when people come to you, are they looking at multiple banks at a time, or do you recommend that, or I know, like if you're looking for cars, for example, you go to one dealership and another dealership, have several conversations. Do people do that in banking also?
So people do that in banking. The one thing I would say is, now you go back to pricing, right? So if price is your most important thing, then that's what you should do. But you have to keep in mind, if you want that best pricing, you have to be a pristine customer. Like when you go into Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Union Bank, US Bank, those banks right there will have hands down the best pricing.
Right.
Hands down. But the credit is going to be more difficult. So if you're going to be bidding, then those are the banks you want to go to. But as you go down market to smaller banks, then it's probably not as good as an idea to bid because the banks won't. The banks tend to not like it.
What about on deposits, interest-bearing accounts, things? I know interest rates are very low right now, but are you guys competitive with some of the bigger banks out there in terms of CDs and interest-bearing money market accounts, things of that sort?
So that's interesting. See, the reason why the bigger banks are so competitive with pricing on their loans is because they don't actually have to pay much for deposits.
Okay.
Since 2008 and the Dodd-Frank Act and all that good stuff, the big banks have been gaining deposit share and they don't have to pay for it. So smaller banks are actually where you're going to find the best deposit rates.
Okay, that's good to know. Besides lending, because I was just talked about deposits, but besides lending, what else should a good banker do to help the business? They're going to help a business out.
So this is another cliche term, but you should really be looking for a trusted advisor. A good banker should have taken the time in his career to build out his network and be able to give you feedback on a variety of topics. They don't have to be the expert in anything, and they don't need to be able to give you an immediate answer on anything. But if you ask your banker a question and they just give you a glazed look and say, I don't know, then you probably don't have a very good banker.
Someone with more tenure in the banking space, then. I mean, that's the only way you get a network going if you've been around for a little while, right?
Or it just means somebody that's wanting to go out and meet people, right? Because you could have a guy that's very motivated to be very transactional. Again, that's not the trust advisor. That's very transactional, and he's going to be one and done. For a good banker, in addition to trying to find products, he should be trying to meet other people in the industry, just like you, Eric, that if a client says, do you have a financial advisor I could talk to? My business is growing.
Right.
I want to know if I should be diversifying. The banker may not be the expert on that, but he should have taken the time to anticipate these needs so he can refer someone like you to his client. Or if he had a business that says, my tax returns are getting more complex. Do you have a CPA I could talk to?
Right.
Or I want to have protect assets. Do you have an attorney I could talk to? So that's what a good banker would do. Otherwise, you just have a transactional guy.
I guess it all falls back to that initial discovery conversation. I mean, when you're sitting down with them and they're initially in your office and you're learning more about them, that discovery process will kind of guide you in terms of where you can guide them in terms of other services with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the banks, they try to have everything internally. So they try to be all things to everybody. I like your approach, though, where you kind of go outside the bank and take them to the specialist or someone who's an expert in that area.
Well, most banks are not experts, no matter what they say. So if they aren't prepared to do that, then they're probably not a good banker. They're a transactional guy. Like at my bank, when a deal doesn't fit, I don't waste time. Like if I get financial statements and I took, the three things we can execute on, we don't execute very well on price. So somebody comes to me and the number one thing they're concerned about is price, and their financials at first glance look strong. First thing I do is I refer them out. I don't try to waste their time and say that I'm going to get them an awesome rate. I'll say, based on your strong financials, let me introduce you to my guy at Chase or my guy at Union Bank.
So when you say your pricing wouldn't be competitive with them, I mean, what's the variance in terms of pricing on a loan that you're talking about and that you refer out? And the reason I ask that, Thanh, is because if you're getting good service, sometimes you get what you pay for, So, I mean, for me personally, I want to be referred to at Chase and get substandard service or stay with you and pay a little bit more. I guess I'm trying to figure out how big of a difference is that in price.
So it can be pretty significant, right? Like Chase right now, the bigger banks, I don't want to say Chase specifically because I'm not looking at their sheets every day.
Right.
But more specifically, the bigger banks right now, you can get probably 5% fixed for 10 years on an SBA loan, and then it'll reset. But at my bank, we're floating. So there's that risk that is floating, and we're going to have a higher margin. So you could say, the savings can be pretty significant if you're able to get approved at the bigger bank.
So 5% at a bigger bank, 7% with you, or something like that.
Yeah,
or?
6.5, maybe 7%.
Okay,
yeah.
So 1.5. Wow, if I'm getting better service and I'm getting some hand holding and some guidance to other professionals to help grow my business, that might be worth it.
Well, if you do need a lot of hand holding, it's likely you wouldn't get approved at the bigger banks. So
Right.
that's kind of where the product fit is.
Mhm.
Because not every, like, I'd say that you should be looking for a trusted advisor, but some people may already have those resources in house once they've grown so large, and they view banking more as a commodity.
You know, one of my frustrations, because I bank with bigger banks and the smaller ones, or I should say regional banks, is when I come into a bigger bank, the people that I talked to the last time I was in there, they're no longer there.
Yeah.
I guess they kind of rotate them to different branches or something of that sort. Yeah.
Well, so at the bigger banks, I mean, this isn't a bashing the bigger banks thing, but it's more of the brand is what drives foot traffic, right? Like
Right.
that's probably
Right.
how you pick those bigger banks based on the brand, as opposed to a little bank. It's kind of the people because my bank has no discernible brand in the market, but we have good people.
Mm-hmm. You know, I picked the bigger banks initially because that's all I knew, and I wanted to have a broad ATM availability. Then I found out when I got to some of the smaller banks, I could use everybody's ATM, and they just reimbursed me the ATM fee. So that has opened up everybody's network for me. So,
Yeah.
Now, tell me, besides what we talked about, is there anything else you could tell the audience that they should know about banking and bankers, and that would give them some type of benefit or leg up when they're out looking for a bank?
Well, when you're out looking for a bank, one thing that will give you a leg up if you're referred to somebody, because then they can tell you about the bank as opposed to you sitting and talking to a sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes the sales guy, unfortunately, is just going to try to push a product that gets him paid. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you may need a little bit more advice or options than that sales guy is giving you. So it's always good to try to get one referral, to do a little bit of due diligence on the bank before.
Now, how long has your bank been around?
So our bank has been around since 2005.
Okay.
So it's always been in the Little Saigon community,
Mhm.
and always there to try to serve the Vietnamese population.
Okay. Yeah, having someone who can speak Vietnamese when they come in is, I would think, extremely important.
Yeah, so our team does have pretty much everybody in the branch speaks Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
My Vietnamese is okay,
Okay.
so you talk to me, then you might get a few chuckles, but
Mm-hmm.
it'll pass.
What about the Hispanics? Do they come into your bank a lot? Or, I mean, there's a lot of Hispanic people. The Hispanic population is growing in Southern California, everywhere.
Yeah.
Do they come into your bank also?
So them not too much because we don't have any Spanish speakers, and
Okay.
we're a little bit. Our location is at 15606 Brookhurst, so it's a little
Okay.
further from
Know
the Santa
exactly
Ana
where it is.
area. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being with us today, Tang, on Wait What? Financial Matters That Matter. To get hold of Tang, please call me at area code 714-643-2500. And my extension is 420.